Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crimes and Closings. I'm Dia Kappelman,
And I'm Jenny Wilson-Payton.
and we are here for our 9th episode. We are almost to the double digits.
Nice.
Yay!
I know. I feel like we're finally in. Just think about when we're teenagers. That's when it gets really crazy. After 13.
Yes. Then we're going to be brats. We're going to have attitudes.
Oh, yeah. It'll be great.
And this week you are going to talk about something that happened in the same town as The Watcher, which we did a couple episodes ago.
So I learned a lot. It's Westfield, New Jersey, and it's about a 6.7 square mile. So Kansas City world, kind of think Mission Hills.
Okay.
You know, that kind of area, that kind of neighborhood. The average median price in 2020 was roughly $900,000. So we're talking some nice homes, nice areas. It has also been ranked on some, informal websites as one of the spookiest towns ever, simply because we have The Watcher. We have this case. The Lindbergh baby was kidnapped and murdered there. And then there's been various other ones, other murders that have kind of popped up, but not nearly as famous as those three.
In this one town?
In this one town. The other interesting thing is that the Addams family, the creator Charles Addams, he grew up in that town. And so they say that the Addams family, the big Victorian mansion, that's all spooky. They say that that's based off the houses in that town. So they have a big festival every year kind of in his honor. And they do a bunch of Wednesday Addams costume contests. Wednesday is personally my spirit animal. I adore her.
Yes.
So yeah, it's kind of an interesting little town. So Westfield, New Jersey, and this is going to be this happens in 1971. This gentleman called John List has been known to be one of they call it a family annihilator. It's basically somebody that wipes out their entire family. And he's probably one of the most famous. So John lived in a 19-room colonial mansion with his wife, Helen, his 16-year-old daughter, Patricia, his 15-year-old son, John Jr., and his 13-year-old son, Frederick. His mom, Alma, also lived upstairs in her own little apartment. So John was a devout Lutheran. He taught Sunday school. He was, the family was kind of known as kind of reclusive, but they seemed nice enough. They were just real quiet.
Pillars of the community.
Pillars of the community.
Nothing was wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. So John worked as a vice president and a comptroller in a bank. And that's kind of, once he got back from World War II, that's kind of what he started doing and just continued it. So 1971 rolls around and John loses his job. So instead of what normally would happen where you would, hopefully talk to your family and you guys would, tighten your belts and do what you needed to do, he decided that every day he was going to wake up and go to the train station and let everybody think that he was going to work. So he never told his family that he had lost his job.
Oh no.
So this went on for a couple months. They said that he would go every day, get up, get dressed, go every day, read the newspaper, take naps, and try to figure out ways to get his family out of this financial quandary that is literally starting to snowball.
Get another job?
Yeah. They said he was a little socially awkward, so that kind of helped with him not being able to get a job. So then he'd return home like nothing was wrong. So did this for a couple months, and then he started getting foreclosure notices on his beautiful 19-room mansion. And he realized he didn't want his family to be subjected to the embarrassment of foreclosure, let alone the embarrassment of going on welfare. So he was very, it was basically murder. In his mind, it was, I'm going to either murder my family or we're going to go on welfare. So murdering them is going to be better because they're going to go to heaven.
I don't feel like that's a better option.
I don't either. And I have a feeling they probably wouldn't either.
Yeah. Did they have a choice in?
No. So he kind of tried for a little bit, as much as he could, to keep them afloat. He was stealing money from his mother, Alma, who he, of course, was in charge of her bank accounts. And he was encouraging his children to get jobs so that they could kind of, it would instill the good values, but it also would help keep the family going. Yeah. So when that got to be too much, it still they couldn't keep the foreclosure away. He devised a plan. He thought that if he killed them, they would still be able to get into heaven. But if he killed himself, he wouldn't be able to get into heaven because that was a sin. So he just hoped that if he killed them, he could
wait.
Yes, I know.
So if he killed them, he could still get into heaven just as long as he didn't commit suicide.
He would get into heaven because he would ask for forgiveness. So
before he died.
correct. So correct.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm interested to hear this plan because I have a lot more questions.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that works out. I think premeditation comes in there somewhere.
I think so.
I think God is good with, taking care of some accidents that happen, but you can't just sit there and go, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
I mean, I'm not a theology major, but
yeah, all my years in Catholic school tells me no. So he just thought he could murder them and then just ask for forgiveness, and all would be good, and they'd all be reunited in heaven. Okay.
But what was he gonna do? So he's gonna murder them, and then what's his plan for himself? If he can't kill himself, your face is not. I feel like this is not going well.
It's not going well. Yeah, this man is just so warped. It's very warped. So we'll get to what he did with his time.
Okay.
So it even went as far as about 4 days before he actually committed the murders. He was sitting down at the dinner table with all of them, and he's like, "So guys, say you die. What would you like done with your bodies?" So they had a rousing family discussion about cremation and burial and all that fun stuff. And he actually is quoted, and I want to get this right. I remember talking about funerals and cremations and burials. I thought I was being real clever.
Are you serious? So it's not even premeditation. Like in that moment, you're like, we're better off dead than going into financial ruin.
Mm-hmm.
4 days before, he is even having the forethought of, Jenny, say I murdered you. Just throwing this out there. He cares enough to take care of their bodies afterwards.
Yes, and let me tell you, this guy just is this.
It gets worse.
I honestly think if I was living in Westfield, New Jersey, I'd just be like, peace out. This is just there's something obviously in the water.
Yeah,
people are writing letters. People are
kidnapping
Erin babies.
Brockovich gotten on this? Because maybe she needs to get involved with whatever's going on there.
Yep. So November 9th, 1971, he decides it's gonna be the day. So he walks out to the car like he's leaving to work. He gets his handguns, he loads them, and he goes in and he shoots his wife Helen in the back of the head while she's drinking her coffee. He then proceeds to go upstairs to his mom's apartment and kill her. And then he waits for Patricia and Frederick to get home.
From school.
When they both got home, he shot them both in the back of the head.
So he's there with the 2 dead bodies.
Yes.
From the morning when he's supposed to leave until they get home from school, and he still has no, I should stop.
Oh, it did.
Okay.
As I say, it gets better.
Oh my goodness.
So he was really big in wanting them to not know who did it. So he was very concerned about killing them in the back of the head or shooting them in the back of the head. So he couldn't bring
because they would tell God on him, or what?
Apparently, I don't know.
What does it matter at that point? You're killing them. Okay.
Logic is not this man's strong point.
Okay, where's Criminal Minds? Criminal Minds needs to tell me what's going on here. Okay.
So Criminal Minds is not involved in the story, but America's Most Wanted is. So it gets interesting.
Okay, so sorry. They come home.
Okay, so there's on some of the stuff that I read, they were saying that Patricia had called home sick, so she may have gotten home a little bit earlier than Frederick, so he had time to do what he needed to do. He also then put them into the ballroom and wrapped them in sleeping bags. He cleaned up all the blood so that when Patricia and Frederick got home, they wouldn't see the blood and start getting panicked.
Oh, so he put the mom and the wife in sleeping bags, not Patricia and Frederick.
Everybody ended up in sleeping bags.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody ended up in sleeping bags in the ballroom.
I mean, normally that would sound like a really fun night.
I know. We're having a slumber party.
Yeah, we had a really good night, drank a little too much.
We all ended up in sleeping bags in the ballroom. He couldn't bring Alma down. He couldn't get her. She was too heavy to get down the stairs. So he left her up in the apartment. So we've got Helen taken care of. We got Patricia taken care of. We got
Alma.
Frederick taken care of. And we got Alma. Okay, so that still leaves John Jr., who was supposedly his favorite child. Of course, namesake of his oldest son. He decides he's hungry, so he fixes himself a sandwich.
The John
But-
Senior.
John Senior fixes himself a
Where's
sandwich
John Junior in this?
at a soccer game. So he fixes himself a sandwich and then proceeds to go to John Junior's soccer game and watch him at his soccer game.
Are you serious?
Yes. Yeah. And before that, while he was waiting for everybody, he was busy making phone calls to the schools, to the churches, went to the post office to get the mail stopped. So he was telling everybody that they were going on an extended vacation where they were going to be visiting Helen's mother. So he
was busy.
He was busy.
So he wasn't just, I'm thinking he's just sitting around with dead bodies, but
Yeah,
he had a to-do list.
He did have a to-do list, and he was very on top of his to-do list. And he even says after he completed all the murders, he felt like he had a good full day.
Are you serious?
I know. So,
but yeah, I mean, he did. Can you imagine when his son is like, why didn't mom come? He's like, oh, she's with kids in the ballroom.
they're just chilling in the ballroom. So, and it's interesting because John Jr. ended up struggling. So he actually got back home with John Jr. And he shot John Jr. He saw John Jr. move and proceeded to shoot him again. Oh. So they claim that John Jr. is really the only one of them that knew that his dad was the one that killed him. Okay. They did say that he ended up shooting John Jr. 10 different times.
Really?
Yep. So he left. I know he got everybody wrapped in sleeping bags, turned the air conditioning, way down low.
Are you serious?
Put on classical organ music, turned all the lights on in the mansion. Okay.
That's not creepy.
No.
Why? Wait. I have more questions. Okay.
The questions will be answered.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. So he then proceeds to get in his car and drive to Kennedy Airport. Parks the car. There's no record of him taking a flight and disappears for 18 years.
What?
Yes. Because of all the work that he did, the bodies were not found for up to 6 weeks. So they're thinking about a month to 6 weeks. The first time that they were actually mentioned in the paper was December 12th. So we're talking November 9th to December 12th.
Okay. I'm going back to you said that he wasn't found for 18 years. Are you waiting to the end to tell us if it's dead or alive?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, then
we're getting there. It's actually, this is not too long of one. Okay. There's lots of weird.
All right, I'll hold off on my questions then. Okay, and so because he had told them extended vacation, although I don't get the turning on the lights on.
I don't either. So that's actually one of the things that tipped everybody off was the fact that the lights were starting to slowly burn out. And so people are like, okay, dude, something's up. So that's when they called the authorities and they discovered the bodies.
Okay.
With the bodies, they also discovered a 5-page manifesto written to the pastor of his church. Okay. Basically, it says that the 1970s were a sinful time. Had he been around much longer, he would have found out it just keeps going downhill. Just keeps going. He weren't around for the 80s.
He said the 1970s, he only made it to 1971. I mean,
it just goes downhill. And that his family was turning away from God. And so he was concerned about that. And he wanted to basically nip it in the bud before it gets too much worse.
I mean, technically he nipped it, but
yeah. Patricia wanted to be an actress. And that, of course, was
the horror.
Completely sinful and satanic. And he just felt like he was becoming disillusioned with everything that was going on. He and his wife were having some problems. It actually turned out that rumored she had syphilis, an untreated case of syphilis that she had received from her first husband, who was in the Korean War. And so it had been not treated. And I'm assuming that he ended up getting it, but there's been no mention of that as well.
Because that can go to your brain,
yes.
Right? That can cause
like the madness of King George. It causes all sorts of problems.
So maybe this was related to that?
It could be. There's nothing that I've read that even speculates, but that would be my first red flag right there.
Yeah.
So basically there was a ton of leads coming in and eventually everything went cold. There was even speculation that he was D.B. Cooper.
Really?
Yes. And so that is something that's been now vehemently, he denied it and they've ruled him out as being D.B. Cooper. But for a long time that was even suspected. Huh. And then oddly enough, a couple months after the bodies were found, the List family house burned to the ground. And in it, and I'll get to this at the end, was something that could have solved all of everybody's problems. So it burned with the house. So they don't know what happened to the house.
Suspiciously burned, or?
Well, it was under unusual circumstances. There was talk that satanic cult was involved. There was talk, I mean, there was just a lot of just rumors and talk.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I mean, something probably happened. It could have even been kids being stupid over there, but there was nothing that was really pinpointed as.
So it wasn't somebody going in or this piece of garbage coming back and burning it.
Yeah, they said they're pretty confident that he did not, because of the way he wanted to preserve the bodies. He probably would not have gone back and destroyed the house.
But wait, why did he talk about what they wanted done afterwards if he was just gonna just keep them in the ballroom?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know that's kind of one of those the things that make you go, yeah. So, and he was, like I said, concerned about his daughter becoming an actress. So let's fast forward now 18 years. So America's Most Wanted had been on for a little while at that point, and they had started to kind of lose fizzle. So they needed really something to spice things up. So they decided that they were going to run an episode based on this case. They hired a gentleman named Frank Bender, who is a famous sculpturist. And so they gave him a bunch of family photos, they gave him a bunch of information, and asked him to do a bust of what John List potentially would look like.
Now, or
18
years later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he did it. And when I say, I'll put a picture up, when I say it is picture, when I say it's an exact lookalike of who he ended up looking like at 18 years later, it is scary. Even down to the guy was like, something's missing. And he decided to put some glasses on. When he was caught, the gentleman was wearing the exact same pair of glasses.
But if you're talking early 90s, everyone wore, is it the wire square glasses? Kind of
they're actually looking? Like the big, they're kind of like what at least my grandparents wore in the late 80s, early 90s. So they're like the big plastic frames.
Okay.
Yeah, big black plastic frames.
Okay, gotcha.
So this bust was then aired on America's Most Wanted, and things started coming in. There's a couple of different accounts. The biggest one, and the one that they think seems to be the most true, is that a neighbor called the tip-in for a gentleman who was married and living in Colorado at the time, and his name was Robert Bob Peter Clark. It also was rumored that maybe his wife was the one that called him in, but it turned out that indeed it was John List. So he basically left, hid out for 18 years, created a new family, became an accountant, became very involved in the church, and lived this entire different life for 18 years.
Are you serious?
I know. So June 1st, 1989, 11 days after that episode aired, he was arrested. And then, then he was convicted in New Jersey of 5 counts of murder on April 12th, 1990. He had been living in both Denver and Richmond, Missouri. He had been remarried and, like I said, started that new life.
When did he get remarried?
Fairly shortly after he translated. Yeah. And then one of the other crazy things about this story, I think that's going to be my catchphrase. The crazy thing is
everything.
He had adopted the name based on Robert Clark on a college classmate that somebody he had gone to college with. And the classmate, when interviewed, was like, dude, I have no idea who this guy is.
Really?
So it was almost like he became like maybe obsessed or decided he really wanted to emulate this guy and picked his name. And the guy's like, I don't even know.
Can you imagine being the real Robert Clark and finding out this Annihilator met you in college and wanted to have your name and maybe your life?
It's scary. That would probably happen to me. I've had some pretty close calls like that. It would be like, I want to wear her face.
Yeah.
Okay, so April 12th, 1990, he was convicted. May 1st, 1990, he was sentenced to 5 life terms in prison. He never showed any remorse. And even up to his death, he was convinced he was going to heaven. He died of pneumonia at age 82, March 21st, 2008. His body was not claimed for a really long time, but they finally buried him next to Alma in Frankenmuth, Michigan.
Why?
I know, that would kind of...
Why? No.
I'd be like, dude, get him out of here.
What about her family?
Almost family?
Like, yeah, like the rest of, did he have brothers or sisters?
There's not anything really.
Okay.
Yeah, there's really nothing said about that.
Okay.
And I've read a lot of articles, watched a lot of videos, and the only thing that was really said was that she was supposedly a very domineering woman, but it doesn't go into much else.
Okay, so there's maybe no one to stand up for her and say, maybe don't put it in here.
Not a good idea. So, and to this day, or when, well, I guess to the date of this article that I read, John Walsh has the bust still in his office, as just a
Really?
reminder of, that America's Most Wanted was doing some good.
It did.
They did catch some things. So now back to what could have saved the family. In the home, in the ballroom that everybody was put in, there was a signed Tiffany and Company stained glass ceiling that at the time would have sold for probably over $100,000. So had they sold that, that would have been able to wipe out all of his debts and potentially put them back on the right track. So
Really?
the irony of that is painful, is very painful because,
It could have been, but it sounded like maybe he just wasn't right to begin with.
Yeah,
like it could have been anything that.
Yeah, it was, he was pretty much an odd duck from the beginning.
So you murder your entire family, and then you go live a happy life, and you're gonna claim it was for their benefit?
Yeah, I mean, his poor wife, his poor second wife.
Can you imagine thinking about all the fights you had? Like, that could have been my last day.
Yeah.
He could have been planning, he might have been planning something then.
Yeah. I mean, it's bizarro to think. I mean, there's, I'm sure a quote from Stephen King somewhere about not knowing your significant other, or you don't know and actually I can, it's almost on my tongue, but something about not knowing the garden of your spouse's true self or something like that. I'll have to look it up and put it as a well actually next week. But it's the truth. You really, no matter how much you know, and you think you know somebody, the person sitting next to you doing a podcast could murder you at any time.
You're safe. It's good.
Have some tea. So that's what we got. I think I'm done with Westfield, New Jersey, but the Lindbergh baby kind of has me intrigued. So that might be a later. Yeah.
That one, yeah.
I try not to do anything heavy like child death, but well,
you'll have to do that one. I don't think I could.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that one at least is a lot older than some of the other ones, like good old friend Kyler Yurst, or Casey Anthony. No. So there we go. That's the story of the John List murders.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was really good.
Yeah, it was an interesting one.
I'm glad they got him.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad that, I mean, America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries and things like that, while they're totally entertaining, they have truly opened the door for crimes to be solved and for the public to become kind of, armchair detectives. Though I can't even imagine how many people crackpots have called in and been like, my mailman is,
But all it takes is one of those to be right. I mean, imagine if you saw his bust up on TV and then going, that looks like the neighbor.
You're like watching the show with your husband and you're like,
well, if it was him, can you imagine the horror that you would have sitting there next to him, like
have some soup or something, you're mid.
And then trying to play it cool, like I need to go.
How weird.
I need to go see.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That was good. I liked it. Thank you.
You are welcome.
All right. So now to our real estate part, the closings part.
Yep.
And this actually has to do with closings because we have dealt with this week as far as a lot of people will know what closing means. Okay. We have a closing date. That means you sign papers.
Right.
But what exactly closing, possession, funding, all of those can be completely separate.
Yeah.
On the same day, different days. What do holidays have to do with it? So do you want to take it away with the differences?
So everybody pretty much knows closing. That's when you go to the table and you sign all the paperwork. You sign your life away, essentially, get with all that paperwork. Then the next thing you have is possession. Possession often happens, usually the time of closing, the time of funding, or 5 o'clock the day of
Whatever your contract.
yeah, whatever your
says.
contract says. Read your contract, talk to your agent about the best time for you to
I'm
get
seeing
possession.
a lot of delayed possessions right now, a lot of them. And delayed possession
Yeah.
is just a different and extended time,
Yeah.
even up to a month
Yeah.
before, yes, you've signed the papers, but you actually don't get possession of the house to walk into the house as yours
Yeah.
until a month later.
Yeah. And that's kind of scary. I mean, it does need to happen sometimes,
It
but
does.
there's a lot of questions that come up about whose insurance is covering it.
Yes.
What's going to happen. I have heard stories of the house burning down,
Yes.
you know, and
Or a tornado.
yep, or hail like we had last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
So talk to your agent about any delayed possession
Yep.
and make sure it's in your best interest.
Yep. So, and
Funding.
So funding then usually happens most of the time if it's before noon, 1 o'clock, they try to fund the same day. Sometimes it happens the following day. So basically that means the money has been transferred to where it needs to be, checks have been cut, and you're truly done with the transaction.
Yes, the title companies have put the money
where it needs to
everywhere
go.
it's supposed to go.
Yep.
Yes.
So yeah, that's about it.
All right, we're good. We will
Yep.
see you guys in 2 more weeks.
Have a great day.
See you later.
Bye.